Hey everybody, it's LavenderTowne, and today I'm going to be trying to create the ultimate horror character design by combining elements from all the most iconic slasher killers from horror movies across the decades, and seeing if this simple math would actually create a proper character design. Primarily just because this trope is so identifiable and so long lasting. It's literally lasted decades and it's still super effective today. So I thought this would be a really fun way to sort of analyze it and talk about it from a character design perspective. So at first what I planned to do was actually to try to combine every horror antagonist that I could. So I was originally going to do a masked killer, but with a doll mask to sort of represent all of the haunted dolls that are popular, you know, your Annabelles and stuff like that. But pretty quickly I realized that was going to be just completely way too much. So I narrowed my scope just a touch, though it's still a lot to try to add all of the slashers and human killers into one. I'm going to try my best. The first way that I'm going to try approaching this so that we don't have to leave too much out is I'm going to show two different life stages of this character basically. First off is when he's sort of young, in his upper teens or early 20s. This is going to represent your traditional masked killer and really be emblematic of killers like Ghostface from Scream, you know, characters that are really classic teen slasher movie characters. And then I'm also going to show this character at an older stage, so he's gotten away with his crimes in his youth and now he's grown up, and he's grown into more of a distinguished gentleman killer, more like Hannibal or Norman Bates from Psycho, I guess, kind of, or I guess more like American Psycho. But yeah, basically I just really wanted to combine all these together. I started putting up some reference photos just to give myself some ideas and make sure that I was staying really true to this concept. I wanted to add in really classic stuff, old movies as well as newer ones like Brahms from The Boy. Like I said, I mean, the mask killer has been around for so long. The babyface killer from Happy Death Day is also really recent, so yeah, it's really a testament to how much that as a trope really works. It does seem like killers have mainly two styles of wardrobe, which I'm trying to include in the two different ages of this character. So for the younger one, I'm definitely leaning into more of the casual wear kind of look for the killer. So a good example is Jason Voorhees. A lot of killers have a quick costume over the top, but I thought that basically just leaning into this teen delinquent maniac killer was kind of the direction I wanted to go for the younger stage. And then the other really common outfit for a horror character is a suit. There's something about suits that I think just really unnerve people. Maybe it's the anonymity of them and how common they are, or just the severity of the actual design of a suit. But you look at Slenderman or any of the business killers, like Hannibal, suits are just really common. So I definitely needed to have both. And I ended up wanting to do a slightly modified version of even the younger stage. I really got carried away with this character design, honestly. So I wanted to show one with the mask on and one with the mask sort of off to the side. Originally I was going to have it on his head, but then I kind of felt like that looked a little bit too much like my Ghostface killer drawing that I had done previously, and I didn't want to totally mimic it, especially since the pose is kind of similar. I don't know what it is, I just love drawing my psychos in a crouching pose. I guess it kind of implies that you're on the ground, which makes it scarier, right? So for the older version, I definitely wanted him standing sort of imposingly over you. Just a very threatening sort of authority figure. One of the things I was sort of thinking about while I was working on the older version was how much we fear people who have authority over us. I think that's why there's so many scary doctors or scary nurses. You know, people who have power over you when you're vulnerable. It's easy to turn that into something scary. Now, fun fact, I actually did this drawing on stream, so there's a few little notes that I added in because of the direct influence of the people watching the stream, and one of those was a mullet on the younger version, and I ended up loving this addition because it also kind of helps with the timeline. It makes the teen version of our killer actually feel like they're from a different time. And I'll be honest, I really like how unique it makes him look. I tend to draw male characters with very similar hairstyles, and even when I looked at all my references, it does seem like there's not a huge amount of variety in like the dude hairstyles that these killers get to have. So despite the fact that this is supposed to be sort of an iterative character design combining all the elements, I did want there to be just a tiny touch of uniqueness. But I did sort of like pull it back in when it came to designing the mask. I knew I wasn't going to keep the doll thing necessarily, just because I felt like it didn't really read as a reference to all these other masks. And then I thought, why not just go crazy literal with it and actually combine all the different masks into one mask and see how that looks. Before I could get to that though, I had to figure out what his actual face would look like underneath. Initially, I was tempted to do some sort of like disfigurement, kind of like Freddy has, you know, the severe like burns on his face. But I ended up leaning more towards like the Billy Loomis kind of vibes, like a pretty normal looking person, just because I think that while he's young and fresh, I think that it makes more sense. Also, I've always just preferred you know, normal looking killers. I think that they're scarier because they can sort of blend, and it's also kind of mean to like make people who have like birth defects and stuff like associated with evil necessarily. I don't think that's always a good thing. I guess in Freddy's case it's a little different because he was literally burned because of his crimes against the community, but you get the picture. So I ended up pulling back on any sort of like scarring or disfigurement on his face, and ended up sticking with a relatively boyish look, definitely like the cocky sort of psychopath smile. And then I wanted to give him some nice 80s kicks to match that nice little shaggy mullet he's got going on. And as for the clothes, I just tried to keep it pretty subdued for the younger version, just pretty basic pants. Again, like a slight overcoat, just because it does seem like common for there to be like a hood and long sleeves. You don't see a lot of like killers in tank tops necessarily. And I also thought this gave an opportunity for me to like layer references to the other killers, to actually give him layers. So I decided that the shirt underneath was going to be Freddy's shirt, because I wasn't going to put that horrible fedora on this character. I did not want to do that. And all that really left us with was a Freddy's iconic weird striped green and red shirt. And I also decided to make the jacket coloration wise very similar to Jason's, because again, I really wanted there to be like as much referencing to all of these killers as possible, since that was kind of the whole point of the video. So I put the like hockey mask holes at the top to reference Jason. I did one eye that was referencing Michael Myers mask and one eye to reference Ghostface mask, and then the bottom part is like a fleshy little flap of the Leatherface mask from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Honestly, I was shocked at how like creepy this mask turned out. I thought it was gonna look so stupid with, you know, all of the parts just sort of combined, but the asymmetry of the eyes and like, I don't know, the weird like the weird, I don't know what else to call it, the lower section that is referencing Leatherface actually looks like pretty gross and weird and scary. Like if you saw that looming out of the shadows in your bedroom at night, of course you would be terrified. Like that's just absolutely terrifying. It's really scary and upsetting that while I was working on this video, like between me starting this character design and finishing it, my house actually did get broken into by a home invader, which I never thought would happen. And it definitely put a different tone on this whole video for me. I actually had to take a break from it for a couple days before finishing it up. But yeah, that's a story for another time, I guess. But anyway, for the older version, I wanted to employ that classic Kubrick stare, where the character drops their face down and then looks up sort of through their like eyelashes, and it makes for a rather scary looking image. And I wanted to make a suit that's not 100% standard. I was definitely trying to like blend a couple different like eras and suit styles together just to reference more of the characters that I was thinking of. And I wanted to switch up the weapon because the Gentleman Killer doesn't necessarily stick to the classic knife that a lot of the slasher killers like to use, so I ended up giving him an axe in his older version to reference American Psycho. And yeah, it's a very strange thing to try to combine all of these things, but weirdly enough, I think it actually does work at these two different age ranges. I picture that he probably had like a long break where he stopped killing for a while, and the police were just baffled by these, mysterious killings that happened when he was young. And then he sort of comes out of retirement, maybe because of some sort of midlife crisis or something happens in his life that like draws him back into those dark times of his youth. Maybe he's just drawn in by the fact that he was never caught and he's just curious if he can keep going. And I wanted to age him up nicely by giving him some like white in his hair. I decided to keep the like skin tone really like dead looking, just like very pale and sickly. That seems to be a common thread for a lot of these killers. The masks are almost always white as well, like bright white, so there's clearly something about that, and maybe it reminds us of like bones and skulls and stuff. Freddy's shirt kind of forced my hand on the color palette for this character because green and red is pretty hard to tangle with if you're not, in Christmas time. So I had to keep things pretty neutral, but luckily that actually fits pretty well. The color of Jason's jacket actually kind of meshes well with Freddy's shirt, which is interesting. And then obviously a lot of killers like Babyface from Happy Death Day, Ghostface, a lot of killers like to wear all black, so I put the outerwear, particularly on the mask one, as completely black, so that if this person's walking around into the night, they kind of just disappear. And then I just did sort of like an off tone for the shoes just to sort of differentiate them, make them look a little better. I was originally going to do a knife and then a different weapon in the other hand, but I kind of just liked how symmetrical and cool it looked. And then for the older version, I thought that we should do sort of like a burgundy warm sort of color palette. I thought it would look kind of cool, and it would definitely reference Hannibal from like the show Hannibal rather than Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs. I know they're the same character, but the styling was different for the TV show. And I tried to just really harsh up that face and actually make him look older. I have a tendency to keep characters looking pretty young, so I wanted to push away from that and make sure that you can clearly see that this is an older version of the same character. I think I decided for the older guy's profession that he was going to work at a morgue, and basically he surrounded himself with dead people all the time to remind him of his teenage exploits. I feel like this gives a lot of opportunity for him to get back into his old ways, and also would justify him being dressed in formal wear all the time. And yeah, I mean, there he is all finished up. I had a lot of fun doing this. Please let me know if you think that combining all these things made for a scarier or less scary villain. If you have a name for him, please let me know in the comments. I will pin the best name, in my opinion, and that will be his official name. So go for it, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much to my patrons, including Rylan, Kadaria, Something Super, Deadly Nightshade, Maria Vasquez, Astral Fox Art, Middle Z, Alcapa, Lily Allure, The Expressive Poker Face, Marissy Axolotl, Chris Draws, Kai Kizer, Tsubaki, Snow White, The Becky, Liliana Hammond, Mia Lavali, Angel File, Cutie Pie, Nicole Ludwak, Nicolette Queen, Rainwater Pearls, Ice Cream Pal, Lion, Alaria Louie, Nora Cornelison, Cola, Rachel Singh, Yaboyas T, JJ Jade, and of course, La Blah Blah Blah.